Alrighty, y'all. Now that I have slept my entire weekend away to get caught up on not sleeping during the week, I am moving on to Leo or the ESFP in my moral load ranking video series here on YouTube. So, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Heather with Underwater Panther. Please like and subscribe. I am a couple subscribers away from low tier monetization, which I've been working on for the last decade. This YouTube grind is absolutely no joke, so I greatly would appreciate all of your support deeply. All right, so on this channel, we explore something called astro-psychological archetypes, the intersection of astrology, cognitive function psychology, nervous system regulation, and moral development. Already getting hot. The goal of this series is to explain how different archetypes process pressure, responsibility, emotion, and identity through the nervous system. Instead of looking at the zodiac as personality traits, we look at it as psychological architecture. Each archetype regulates stress differently. Each archetype carries a different kind of load within human systems. Some archetypes store emotional weight internally, others carry structural responsibility. In some archetypes, the ones we're entering now move pressure outward through motion and expression. Those are what I call tier 4 motion archetypes. In this part of the series, we're moving into the fire archetypes, beginning with Aries and now continuing with Leo and examining how identity, expression, and leadership develop psychologically through the nervous system. So I am working with multiple different axes here in this series. So I've already done videos on the most masculine through the most feminine, and I've written a book on that. You can find that on my website in the description below. I will probably also put it in the comment section in case you are interested with foundational reading. This is extremely dense information, so we all have to start somewhere. So I've already done Capricorn and Scorpio tier 1 moral load bearers through structure, Cancer and Virgo tier 2 moral load bearers through relational load bearing, and tier 3 was Taurus and Pisces. They are conditional load bearers. They don't naturally carry moral load. And then now we are in tier 4, which is Aries, Leo, Libra, Sagittarius, Aquarius, and Gemini. So I just finished my Aries videos. I can't even remember how many there were, 2 or 3 videos. It seems to take me about 3 or 4 hours to get through explaining the inner and outer masculine and feminine containment, as well as moral load bearing, and the universal integration of the 4 quadrants of the ego astro-psychologically. So there's a lot going on here. So there's a distortion path as well. So before we talk about Leo specifically, let's recap where we are in the framework. Earlier in the series, we covered the masculine load ranking and the 4-tier moral load system. So I'm actually going to bring my key card up so you can see what I am looking at. So the masculine load ranking, let's see, here we go. Okay, so the masculine through the feminine is overall is how energy moves, and then moral load bearing is where consequence lands. So they intersect, these two axes of the masculine and feminine overall, and moral load bearing, those are 2 different axes I'm working with. So they intersect, but they are not identical. So a very critical distinction. So this ranking answers who initiates structure versus who receives and integrates it. So this is the masculine through the feminine. So masculine is outward force, direction setting, boundaries, projection, initiates structure, and absorbs consequence. Feminine, inward processing, attunement, integration, response, integrates impact, and restores connection. This is about vector. Which way does energy move under pressure? So the most masculine through the most feminine, we have Capricorn, ISTJ, Aries, ESTP, Aquarius, INTJ, first tier. Second tier, Leo, ESFP. Sagittarius, ISTP. Third tier, Virgo, ESFJ. Scorpio, ENFP. Fourth tier, Gemini or the ENTJ. Fifth tier, we had Taurus, Libra, Cancer, and Pisces. So I've already made videos on all of that. I'm not going to go too deep into that now. So now we are in moral load bearing, where consequence is internally held. This ranking answers something entirely different. When something goes wrong, who feels it inside first? So this is about internalized responsibility, conscience, pressure, consequence, absorption, guilt versus shame versus avoidance. Who carries failure psychologically? This is the axis of moral gravity, and this is the one modern culture confuses with masculinity. They are not the same. So moral load defined. So moral load is what remains inside a human system after betrayal, abandonment, failure, corruption, relational collapse, and unmet responsibility. It is the afterweight. It is what doesn't evaporate. So some nervous systems discharge that pressure outward. Some systems retain it internally. Some convert it into action, and some convert it into memory. So this framework identifies which archetypes retain weight and which release it. That is the entire architecture, and the way that we can tell that is inner and outer masculine and feminine containment through their integration of their ego throughout their lifetime. It is a huge process. All right, so I think that is enough of that now. All right, so let me see what else I have for my introduction. All right, so I'm going to take that down for now. I might leave it up. I'm going to take it down for a second. All right, so earlier in the series, we covered the masculine load ranking in the 4-tier moral load system. All right, so let me see what else I've got here. So masculine energy moves outward through action, expression, or leadership. Feminine energy moves inward through absorption, integration, and containment. This distinction becomes extremely important when we talk about the tier system. So actually, I'm going to keep that up. I figured I would regret that. All right, so higher tiers tend to store pressure internally. So the tier system is on your screen. Tier 1. Oh, I got to get it back to the moral load ranking. Excuse me, where's that? There we are. Okay, moral load ranking. There are the tiers. Okay, so higher tiers tend to store pressure internally. Capricorn, Scorpio, Cancer, Virgo. Lower tiers tend to circulate pressure outward through emotion. So that is tier 4, Aries, Leo, Libra, Sag, Aquarius, and Gemini. Tier 4 archetypes sit in the emotion layer of the system. They are not designed to store large amounts of psychological pressure for long periods of time. Each archetype does this differently. So they convert pressure into external processes like action, expression, dialogue, belief, abstraction, and narrative. Aries releases pressure through direct action. Leo releases pressure through identity expression and recognition. Libra releases pressure through relational dialogue. Sagittarius releases pressure through philosophical interpretation. Aquarius releases pressure through systemic abstraction. Gemini releases pressure through narrative reframing. These archetypes are not built to carry the system's moral weight. They move it. All right, so quickly, I'm actually going to go over something else that I think will help you see the overall picture. All right, let me see where that is. Okay, so here we are. So we are in tier 4 now. So these are the motion archetypes, tier 4. Let me make sure you can see that on the screen. All right, hopefully that is large enough for you to be able to read. I actually might make that just a wee little bigger for now. Okay. All right, so Tier 4 moral weight bearers: Aries, Leo, Libra, Sag, Aquarius, and Gemini. So these archetypes regulate their nervous system, their inner and outer, masculine and feminine. Let me bring up the key card for Leo briefly so you can understand what I'm talking about. So this is an astro-psychological key card I made 8 or 9 years ago. I've been writing books ever since. And so this is broken down astro-psychologically. Astrologically, you have the ruler, you have exaltation, left field, and fall. Psychologically, you have the hero, cognitive function, parent, child, and inferior. So these are developed throughout your lifetime. Hero, 1 to 12 years old or so, give or take. Parent, 12 through 20. Child, 20 through 30, 35. Inferior, 30 through 35. So this is a lifelong integration path of your psychological, emotional thinking, everything to do with your personality. It's a long process. So that is how I'm breaking this down. And then as well as the inner and outer, feminine, masculine, and feminine. All right. So that is what we will be breaking down after the introduction. All right. So moving back to Tier 4 in the moral load. So these archetypes regulate by movement, regulate their nervous system. They externalize stress. They release responsibility. They pivot psychologically. They do not retain moral residue. This is Tier 4. So Tier 4 is the majority of the archetypes. You have 6 archetypes here in the same tier. So Tier 4, low moral load archetypes. They discharge responsibility outward. They regulate through action, belief, identity, abstraction, and narrative. They do not naturally retain moral residue. It is not a flaw, it's a structural difference. They move energy instead of storing it. They do not retain moral residue naturally. They release, they redirect, they philosophize, they pivot. So that is a structural difference. All right, so they move energy instead of retaining it. They convert tension into action for Aries, expression and identity for Leo, dialogue and rebalancing for Libra, belief systems and meaning making for Sagittarius, abstraction and detachment with Aquarius, and narrative and reframing with Gemini. So they do not sit inside unresolved pressure, they redirect it. They do not carry moral weight forward across time, they reset. That is their design. All right, so I think I hammered that pretty well. I just wanted to go briefly over. All right, so we just went over Aries. Aries is number 7 in the moral ranking system. So Aries are the ESTP. Let me bring up their key card. So Aries' moral weight location is immediate action. They're action-oriented. They have action-oriented responsibility. So Aries feels responsible to act, not to reflect. Consequence is secondary to momentum. They'll fix fast, but don't carry long-term moral residue. Moral weight location is immediate action. Aries feels responsible to act, not to reflect. Consequence is secondary to momentum. So burnout risk is impulsivity. They can be misread as selfish and reckless. Aries feels responsible to act. Once action is taken, moral residue evaporates. So that is a momentum-based conscience. Aries discharges through action. Aries resolves tension by doing something. They don't analyze it. They don't carry it. They initiate. Anger becomes movement. Conflict becomes assertion. They clear pressure through forward motion. Once acted on, it's over, no residue. Okay, so now we have Leo. All right, so Leo is identity-based ethics, moral weight location, self-concept, and honor. Leo carries morality through identity. Who am I if I do this? Guilt arises when self-image fractures, not when system fails. Moral weight location is self-concept and honor. Leo carries morality through identity. So burnout risk is shame collapse, misread as dramatic and ego-driven. Leo carries identity, integrity, not system responsibility. Guilt is self-image fracture, not outcome failure. So Leo discharges through identity and expression. Leo processes through visibility. They externalize emotion through performance, creativity, and presence. They don't sit in shame or moral weight. They restore equilibrium by reclaiming selfhood. If they've expressed it, they've released it. So Libra, actually, I wasn't going to bring Libra up, but I will mention Libra when comparing the axis of Leo and Aquarius. Oh, no, never mind. Okay, never mind. I'm talking... Oh, great. Now I'm glitching because I've got too much stuff up. All right, so I'll get into that later, actually. All right, so let me get back up to my ranking so you can see that while I'm still trying to introduce this video. All right, so transition into Leo. I'm going to take Aries down for now. Actually, I'm going to leave that up. All right, so I can't ever make up my mind. So after Aries ignites movement in the system, Leo performs a very different role. So just remember, we have Aries number 7, Leo number 8. That was the only reason why I was keeping the key card up for now. All right, so Aries creates motion. Leo gives that motion identity. Aries asks what action needs to happen right now. Leo asks who is the one acting. This is why the two fire archetypes are often confused. Both are confident and both move energy outward, but the psychological mechanism is completely different. Aries stabilizes its nervous system through action. Leo stabilizes its nervous system through expression and recognition. Where Aries pushes against the world, Leo radiates it. So what this Leo video will cover. So first we'll talk about why Leo is ranked number 8 in the moral load architecture and why it belongs to tier 4, which I've already gotten into. Then we'll examine the Leo nervous system regulation pattern, which operates through the loop: emotion, expression, recognition, and regulation. This explains why Leo individuals often feel energized in environments where they can create, perform, inspire, or lead. So from there, we'll explore the quadrant architecture of Leo, including outer masculine with SE hero and sun ruler, inner masculine with FI parent and Pluto in exaltation, outer feminine with TE child, Saturn and Uranus, and inner feminine with NI inferior, Neptune and Mercury. So if you do take a quick look again at these astro-psychological key cards, you can see that Aries and Leo both have SE hero and NI inferior. So they do express a little bit differently, but that is certainly something to keep in mind. All right. So each quadrant represents a different psychological layer of this archetype. So we'll also look at the Leo distortion survival order, which often develops as expression, impression, understanding, and reflecting. So this happens because expression regulates the Leo nervous system before deeper reflection develops. Then we will explore the developmental timeline of Leo across childhood and adulthood, how identity forms, how recognition shapes the personality, and how authentic leadership eventually emerges. So later, we will cover the Leo collapse pattern when identity becomes performance, the Leo validation loop and shadow extraction pattern, Leo male versus Leo female psychology, relationship dynamics, and how to love a Leo, as well as the Leo Aquarius polarity axis, and the highest expression of Leo as a radiant leader. All right, so Leo's the archetype that gives movement a visible center. Aries begins the fire. Leo becomes the sun that sustains it. So I do want to go over the 4 fire archetypes. So Aries, Leo are both fire signs. So I'm going to talk about Aries and Leo first a little bit more, and then I'm going to bring in Sagittarius. So they're both fire signs in tier 4 motion archetypes. All 3 fire signs, actually, Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius, are all in tier 4 of my moral load ranking. But they move energy through completely different psychological mechanisms. The common phrase for Aries is I am. But when people hear that, they often assume it means identity like Leo, which is actually incorrect. In reality, Aries and Leo represent 2 completely different stages of identity formation in the psyche. Aries is existence through action. Leo is identity through expression. Understanding the difference clarifies a huge amount of confusion about the fire archetypes. So Aries, I am, existence through motion. When Aries says I am, it is not referring to identity in the reflective sense. Aries is not asking, who am I as a person? Instead, Aries is asserting something much more primal. I exist because I act. The Aries archetype represents the moment consciousness first pushes outward into the environment. So Aries is the baby of the fire signs, Leo is the middle child, Sagittarius is the elder of the fire elemental signs. So before Aries, there is no individual assertion. There is only potential. Aries is the moment the psyche declares, I move, I push, I collide with reality, I exist. This is why Aries is ruled by Mars, the planetary archetype associated with propulsion, survival instinct, and forward motion. The Aries nervous system stabilizes itself through action. Action proves existence. If Aries stops moving, the nervous system begins to feel unstable. Stillness can feel uncomfortable because the archetype is built to discover reality through engagement rather than reflection. So the phrase I am in Aries actually means I am the one who acts, I am the one who initiates, I am the one who moves first. Aries' identity is therefore kinetic rather than reflective. They know themselves through what they do. Action reveals identity, not the other way around. So Leo, their quotation is I will. Identity through radiance. Leo represents the next stage of development. After Aries establishes that the self exists, Leo asks a different question. What kind of self am I? Leo is ruled by the sun, which symbolizes identity, vitality, and personal radiance. Where Mars pushes energy outward through impact, the sun radiates energy outward through presence. Leo does not collide with the environment to prove existence. Leo stabilizes the nervous system by expressing identity visibly. This is why Leo archetypes often feel energized in environments where they can create, perform, lead, entertain, inspire, and be recognized. Visibility regulates their nervous system. Expression releases emotional pressure. Recognition confirms identity. Where Aries says, I am because I act, Leo says, I will show you who I am. This is fundamentally different mechanism. Aries discovers identity through action. Leo projects identity through expression. Why people confuse Aries and Leo. So both archetypes move energy outward. So they are both fire elements. They both are extroverts due to psychological people would say the hero, extroverted sensing hero. Fire element, astrologically, Aries is a cardinal sign. They initiate and start first. Leo is a fixated modality, so they love it when people fixate on them. They're fixated in how they express themselves with what they see and feel. So, So both appear confident, both are associated with leadership, but the source of that leadership is different. Aries leadership comes from initiative, Leo leadership comes from presence. Aries leads because they move first, Leo leads because others orient around their identity. Aries breaks inertia, Leo becomes the center of gravity. Think about the sun. Think about the actual sun. Everything revolves around them. I'm an Aries rising, and for some reason, I always attract Leo risings or like Leo midheavens. And it's just Aries is the emperor and Leo is the king. So, it can be fun to say the least. So, all right, Aries breaks inertia, Leo becomes the center of gravity. Aries asks, what needs to happen right now? Leo asks, how do I embody this moment? So the nervous system difference between the two. The biological regulation pattern also differs. Aries nervous systems regulate through adrenaline cycles, Mars, through trigger, action, release, and reset. Leo nervous systems regulate through expression cycles, emotion, expression, recognition, regulation. Aries releases pressure through motion, Leo releases pressure through visibility. Aries feels calm after acting, Leo feels calm after expressing. So the developmental sequence, psychologically, the zodiac sequence actually reflects the evolution of selfhood. Aries represents the birth of the individual will. Leo represents the formation of identity around that will. So the progress looks like this. Aries, I exist. Leo, this is who I am. Aries establishes agency. Leo establishes identity. Without Aries, nothing begins. Without Leo, nothing has a center. Aries creates movement. Leo creates meaning around the movement. The highest expression of both. When both archetypes integrate their higher layers, they work together beautifully. Aries provides courage and initiation. Leo provides identity and inspiration. Aries opens the door. Leo invites others inside. Aries starts the fire. Leo becomes the sun that sustains it. All right, so now we're going to talk about Leo, Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius. All right, so I got them all here. So Aries, ignition through motion, Leo, identity and radiance, Sagittarius, meaning and belief. All right, so fire. All right, so where was I? Moral load for explanation. So we're evolving from raw action identity to meaning. Fire is the element that moves systems forward, but it does not do it all at once. It develops through 3 different psychological stages of motion. Each fire archetype moves energy outward, but the direction of that movement changes as consciousness matures. So the fire developmental arc, motion, identity, and meaning. Fire represents the stage of development where consciousness stops absorbing the environment and begins shaping it. Water elementally absorbs, earth stabilizes, air interprets, fire moves. But the psyche cannot move intelligently without first discovering agency, identity, and purpose. So the fire archetypes unfold in a progression. Leo or Aries begins the movement. Leo gives the movement identity. Sagittarius gives the movement direction. Without this sequence, fire energy becomes chaotic. With integration, it becomes evolutionary momentum. So, stage 1, Aries or the STP, motion. Aries represents the birth of agency. It is the moment the psyche realizes I can act. Before Aries, the organism is primarily reacting to the environment. After Aries emerges, the organism begins influencing the environment. This is why Aries is associated with Mars in the biological fight response. The nervous system becomes mobilized. Instead of freezing, they move towards obstacles. Action becomes the method of understanding reality. The Aries psyche learns through impact. Push the world, see what happens. Reality responds, feedback appears. Understanding develops after action. So Aries identity forms through movement. This is why the phrase I am can be misleading. Aries does not begin with reflective identity. It begins with existential assertion. I exist because I act. Without Aries energy, systems remain frozen in hesitation. Aries breaks inertia. It is the ignition spark. Stage 2 with Leo, as my computer freaks out. All right, so identity. Once movement exists, something new becomes necessary. Someone must embody the movement. Otherwise, the system has motion but no center. This is where Leo appears. Leo represents the formation of identity around agency. Instead of asking what action should occur, Leo asks, who is the one acting? This archetype stabilizes movement by radiating identity outward. Where Aries pushes energy outward through impact, Leo radiates energy outward through presence. The sun governs Leo because the sun symbolizes central identity. Everything in the solar system orbits around it. In the same way, Leo often becomes a psychological center of groups, not because they dominate others, but because identity radiates outward in a way that others orient towards. This is why Leo archetypes often appear charismatic or naturally visible. The nervous system regulates through expression and recognition. Emotion becomes expression, expression becomes identity, identity becomes influence. Where Aries moves the system, Leo gives the system a visible center. Stage 3 with Sagittarius, meaning. After movement exists and identity forms around that movement, the psyche encounters another question. Where is this all going? This is a stage of Sagittarius. Sagittarius governs direction and belief. While Aries moves and Leo expresses, Sagittarius interprets the journey. And I do just want to point out that 3i Atlas came through Sagittarius in our solar system. Wild. I did a whole video on that. 3i Atlas was like a collective reorientation. All right, so this archetype converts experience into philosophy and meaning. I just took you way out. All right, let's get back into what we're doing. When something destabilizing occurs, Sagittarius does not confront it like Aries or perform it like Leo. Instead, they ask, what does this teach me about life? Experience becomes belief. Conflict becomes philosophy. Pain becomes wisdom. Sagittarius therefore stabilizes motion by giving it direction. Now, I am probably the only astrologer that puts the north and south node in Sagittarius within my key card. If you see that, that is all about direction and meaning and orientation. It's a whole thing in itself. Not going to go too deep now, but it is Sagittarius, very, very deep archetype. So, anywho, what does this teach me about life is what they ask. So Sagittarius therefore stabilizes motion by giving it direction. Without Sagittarius, the fire archetypes might move endlessly without understanding the purpose of the journey. Sagittarius turns movement into path. So why this arc matters. The fire signs represent 3 different layers of agency. Aries creates action, Leo creates identity, Sagittarius creates meaning. This sequence mirrors human development. First, we discover that we can act. Then we discover who we are. Finally, we discover what our life means. Each stage transforms raw energy into greater levels of consciousness. Without Aries, nothing begins. Without Leo, nothing inspires. Without Sagittarius, nothing evolves. So the distortion of the fire arc. When development becomes disrupted, each archetype can become stuck in its stage. Aries distortion, action without reflection, constant confrontation, and impulsive motion. Leo distortion, identity dependent on recognition. Expression becomes performance rather than authenticity. Sagittarius distortion, beliefs without grounding. Philosophy becomes escapism. Understanding these distortions is critical because they reveal how motion archetypes process pressure. Each archetype releases pressure through a different channel. Aries releases pressure through action. Leo releases pressure through expression. Sagittarius releases pressure through interpretation. The integrated fire archetype. When the three stages work together, something powerful happens. Action gains identity, identity gains meaning. Aries moves, Leo inspires, and Sagittarius guides. Together, they create the full arc of human initiative and exploration. The warrior, the leader, the explorer. Movement becomes purpose, identity becomes inspiration, and experience becomes wisdom. All right, so I had to get that out of the way. Thought that was very fascinating. So now we are going to specifically talk about Leo. Deep dive into Leo more. All right, I need a drink break first. Oh gosh, Metallica just came on. This was one of my first favorite songs of all time. Nothing else matters. They don't make music like they used to. And yes, I have to listen to music while I do these presentations. This is such a good freaking song. All right, so Leo ESFP. Tier 4, moral load-bearing archetype number 8. So motion through identity. All right, so I was going to recap the masculine load ranking, which I think I did pretty well. Let me go over here. Let me go through this real quick. All right, I guess I'll do another little recap, which means I have to bring up my key card again. Okay. So we're going to do another little recap because I know that I'm the only one talking about this on YouTube. This has been the most this has been extremely challenging. This series has been the most challenging video series, book writing series I have ever done. It's extremely dense. Yeah, this is extremely intimidating for myself. It's a lot of information. So I'm going to go through this again because I know that I'm like the only one talking about it. So it is what it is. So moral load bearing archetype number 8, motion through identity. So before discussing Leo, it helps to recap. So that's what we're going to do. The masculine load ranking. So in the moral load framework, masculine energy is not defined by gender, but by how pressure moves through the nervous system. So the first series was masculine through the feminine, just the whole archetype itself, not the inner and outer feminine. Now we are working on the inner and outer feminine. So very briefly, let me show you what I'm talking about, because I did make a key card for this. So we'll be getting into this a little bit later. All right, let me make sure it's lined up relatively well, which is difficult sometimes. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, so this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so everything is on the screen. I can't really see OBS. Like, I can't really see what's on my screen. It's extremely small. And then when I watch my video back, I can read it. So I just want to introduce you real quick what I'm talking about. So the outer masculine, the whole archetype is what you're looking at. The whole archetype itself. We normally would say it's the ego. The ego is broken into 4 sections: ruler, exaltation, left field, fall, astrological people, psychological people, hero, parent, child, inferior. Now, what I am adding to the system, Astro-Psychological system, whatever you want to call it, I want to talk about nervous system containment, inner and outer, masculine and feminine containment. Extremely important. So the outer masculine for Leo is extroverted sensing hero and sun ruler. That quadrant is their outer masculine. And then the inner masculine is FI parent and Pluto in exaltation, that whole quadrant. TE child, Saturn, and Uranus is the outer feminine for Leo. Inner feminine is NI hero or NI inferior, Neptune, and Mercury in fall. That whole quadrant is their inner feminine. So, in a healthy integration order, the universal order is outer feminine, inner masculine, outer masculine. Safety or perception, safety, values, and action. But each archetype goes through a distortion developmental phase first, and then they learn to integrate, hopefully. I just personally believe every archetype has their own hero's journey path. A lot of, your how you were raised, your beliefs, your environment, your education. There's a lot that goes into psychological development, but each archetype has a pattern of distortion. So Leo's distortion is radiant survival order. They express first, which is opposite. They have an opposite. So instead of the outer feminine and inner feminine, they have outer masculine and inner masculine. So they express, impress, understand, and reflect last. The nervous system regulates through identity expression and recognition. So I know it's a lot to take in. All right, so we are going through, let me get back to where I was. So in the masculine and feminine, Leo is number 4 most masculine overall. So they are extremely masculine overall, both men and women. We'll be breaking that down later. So through the moral load bearing, they are number 8. Moral load ranking, number 8. All right, so masculine archetypes tend to move energy outward through action, leadership, confrontation, or expression. I'm actually going to leave this up here because it is so nice to have it as a visual for myself, and I'm sure yourself once you get deep into this. So this is the masculine through the feminine ranking. Capricorn, Aries, Aquarius, Leo at number 4, Sag at number 5. So the masculine load ranking and the moral load framework, masculine energy is not defined by gender, but by how pressure moves through the nervous system. At this point, I don't even think I should have to do a disclaimer. Disclaimer, we all have masculine and feminine energies within us. There you go. There's the nuclear bomb most people cannot get. Anywho, masculine archetypes tend to move energy outward through action, leadership, confrontation, or expression. So number 4, Leo's number 4 masculine. Feminine archetypes tend to move energy inward through containment, processing, or emotional absorption. So that would be Taurus, Libra, Cancer, and Pisces are the most feminine. This difference is critical for understanding the tier system. The higher tiers carry psychological weight internally. The lower tiers circulate energy through movement. So let me get back to the moral load ranking. All right, so for the moral load ranking, the higher tiers carry psychological moral weight internally. They're very structured. Capricorn, Scorpio hold the most moral weight through structure. Cancer and Virgo through relationships. Taurus and Pisces go both ways. They tend to not want to carry it, but they will. They don't really, they're not the types to outwardly express what they're carrying. They just carry it in silence. It's actually quite sad. The lower tiers circulate energy through movement. So that's tier 4, Aries, Leo, Libra, Sag, Aquarius, and Gemini. Tier 4 archetypes sit in the category of motion systems. They are not designed to store large amounts of moral or emotional pressure across long periods of time. So I do talk about the retention. So we have 2 fundamental nervous system types. Retention systems, which are the top tiers in moral load ranking. They keep weight, they carry after the moment ends, they replay, they store, they metabolize responsibility internally or relationally. They feel implicated even when no one assigns blame. Those nervous systems become the stabilizers, the conscience carriers, the emotional infrastructure, the accountability anchors. They don't opt in, they are the container. Motion systems, tier 4, what we're talking about now. They move energy, they discharge, they reframe, they pivot. They act, express, narrate, philosophize, or redirect. These systems become the initiators, disruptors, storytellers, explorers, identity movers, and belief carriers. They are not designed to store the weight, moral weight. All right, so instead, they convert pressure into external processes: action, expression, dialogue, belief, abstraction, and narrative. Each tier 4 archetype performs the circulation through a different channel. Aries releases pressure through direct action. Leo releases internal pressure. When I say pressure, I'm talking about their nervous system pressure through identity expression. Libra releases pressure through relational dialogue. Sagittarius releases pressure through philosophical interpretation. My Vesta is in Sagittarius. FYI, my Vesta, my internal soul fire, is in Sagittarius. So here I am. It just cracks me up every time. I love my Native American blanket here. I've got my horsies. Uh-oh. You can't see them anymore. I screwed the whole thing up. Anyways, I grew up with horses. I'm Native American, but it also reminds me of my Vesta in Sagittarius. So I come from a very long line of educational teachers and literal religious preachers. So it just cracks me up because I'm blazing my own path here with Astro-Psychology as an Aries rising. Did I turn this all the way off? I'm getting a little chilly. It's my space heater. I'm in my industrial office out here. All right, so Sagittarius releases pressure through philosophical interpretation. Aquarius releases pressure through systemic abstraction. Gemini releases pressure through narrative reframing. Oh, I'm going to tear into Geminis when I get there. I already know it. These archetypes do not carry these systems' moral weight, they move it. Why Leo is tier 4? So, tier 1 archetypes tend to store structural responsibility, Capricorn and Scorpio. Tier 2 archetypes internalize duty and obligation, Cancer and Virgo. Tier 3 archetypes absorb emotional weight and suffering, Taurus and Pisces. Tier 4 archetypes operate differently. Instead of storing pressure internally, they circulate it outward through movement, expression, or abstraction. Leo belongs to tier 4 because the archetype regulates psychological tension through identity expression rather than moral retention. When emotional or relational pressure enters the Leo nervous system, the psyche does not typically hold that pressure internally for extended periods. Instead, it converts tension into outward expression. Creativity, storytelling, humor, leadership, and dramatic communication all function as release valves for emotional energy. This does not mean Leo lacks moral awareness. Rather, their nervous system is designed to process experience through expression rather than storage. The emotional field moves outward rather than accumulating inside. Because of this, Leo individuals may appear resilient in environments where emotional tension exists. They can often lift the emotional atmosphere of a room through charisma or humor. Their expression acts as a form of psychological ventilation for the group. I just thought of one thing actually I want to mention. Aries often loves, they'll be like lawyers or police officers, or they enjoy teaching actually at a professor level. They like teaching older college level kids. Leos, they tend to also be teachers, but younger, like elementary or middle school. I've noticed that. My grandmother's a Leo. I know another Leo that retired after 30, 35 years of teaching. And it's just a little side note. It's a beautiful little side note. I love that. Leos absolutely love children. They're amazing at helping others become better able to express themselves, get them out of their, like, I'm extremely introverted. And my grandmother, she's a Leo, and she put me in choir and music and huge performances. She had me in all kinds of sports, volleyball, tennis, like all just extracurricular activities out the wazoo. And she really broke me out of my shell. So Leos are so good. And she's the reason why I love video work. She always had those huge video cameras that you would like sit on your shoulder and they were heavy, you know, the old school. And she would always be filming everything. Just, I love it. And I love film work now. I mean, it's entertainment, it's humor, it's, you know, I do love Leo energy. It's very heartfelt, it's very warm, it's yeah. So, anyway, got so creativity, storytelling, humor, leadership, and dramatic communication all function as release valves for emotional energy. All right, so where was I? Lost my spot. However, this regulatory style also means Leo does not naturally retain moral residue in the same way tier 1 and 3 archetypes do. A tier 3 archetype like Pisces may absorb emotional suffering and carry it internally for years. A tier 2 archetype like Capricorn, or no, that's not tier 1, excuse me. A tier 1 archetype like Capricorn may carry responsibility silently over longer periods of time. Leo, by contrast, tends to release emotional pressure through expression. Once the energy has been expressed and the environment has responded, the nervous system resets. So they don't really hold grudges. They just move on quickly, which is great. That's why I absolutely love Aries, because they're so blunt and direct, and they'll just tell you like it is and then move on and not hold a grudge, and everything's fine. I love that. So this is why tier 4 archetypes are often misunderstood within moral frameworks. Their nervous systems are not designed to store weight, they're designed to move energy. All right, so I hammered that down. Leo specifically moves energy through identity radiance. The archetype converts emotional pressure into visible expression that rebalances the social environment. When healthy, this produces joy, inspiration, creativity, and emotional vitality. When distorted, it can produce performance, identity, or validation loops. But in its integrated form, Leo serves a powerful social function within the moral load architecture. It reminds our systems that life is not only about responsibility and suffering. It is also about expression, vitality, and the courage to shine. Without archetypes like Leo, societies risk becoming structurally efficient but emotionally lifeless. Leo brings the sun back into the system. The archetype that reminds the world that identity is meant to radiate outward, not disappear under the weight of responsibility. So Leo sits at position number 8 in the moral load ranking because it represents a specific kind of outward pressure release. Leo does not absorb emotional complexity internally like Pisces or Cancer. It does not stabilize systems structurally like Capricorn or Virgo. It does not interpret meaning through cognition like Aquarius or Gemini. Instead, Leo processes experience by projecting identity outward into the environment. Emotion becomes expression, experience becomes performance, pressure becomes visibility. This is why Leo is categorized as tier 4 emotion archetype. The Leo nervous system does not naturally retain psychological pressure for long periods of time. Instead, it converts that pressure into creative or social expression. When something destabilizing occurs, Leo does not withdraw inward to process it privately. The psyche instinctively externalizes the experience. They speak, perform, express, and radiate. Through that expression, the internal pressure dissolves. Recognition from the environment then stabilizes their nervous system. This is the Leo regulatory loop: emotion, expression, recognition, and regulation. All right, so masculine ranking recap. I'm going to have to move Back up to the masculine through feminine. Take a quick drink break. All right, you can't see my awesome... Oh no, I gotta click on the thing. Can't see my awesome astronaut back there. All right, that's me. I'm the astronaut. All right, so in the masculine polarity scale, Leo ranks 4th in masculine expression. This does not mean Leo is the most aggressive or dominant. It means Leo's nervous system moves energy outward through identity projection and leadership presence. When Aries pushes outward through confrontation, Leo pushes outward through charismatic gravity. Aries moves first, Leo becomes the center others orient towards. This distinction matters because the masculine principle is fundamentally about direction of energy flow. Masculine energy moves outward, feminine energy receives, integrates, and processes. Leo's outward expression places it firmly within the masculine spectrum, even though the archetype also contains strong relational warmth. The sun radiates energy outward, it does not absorb energy inward. This is why Leo belongs within the masculine, the higher masculine tier. So the role Leo plays in the system. If Aries is the spark that starts movement in the system, Leo becomes the visible center of the movement. Motion alone does not organize people. Identity organizes people. When groups move together, they often orient around someone whose presence stabilizes the emotional field. That is Leo. The archetype does not simply act, it embodies. Where Aries asks, what needs to happen right now? Leo asks, who am I in this moment? This creates a different type of leadership. Aries leadership begins through courage and initiation. Leo leadership begins through presence and inspiration. People do not follow Leo because Leo pushes them. They follow because Leo radiates confidence and identity strongly enough that others synchronize with it. So the load Leo carries. Leo does not carry heavy moral residue in the same way that higher load archetypes do. Instead, Leo carries something different. Leo carries symbolic identity for the group. Every social structure eventually produces individuals who represent the emotional or aspirational center of that group. Leaders, performers, cultural icons, public figures, and storytellers and visionary personalities. You know what? I think, what's her name? Madonna. I'm pretty sure Madonna is a Leo. Now that I actually think about it, I was in this huge play. Oh my gosh, we practiced for like a whole year. It was a huge group of people, and we were in this huge play. I think we performed 4 or 5 times on this huge stage. I'm such an introvert. It was like, oh my gosh, so overwhelming, but it was so fun. And it was Evita. We literally recreated Evita. Madonna was in a movie called Evita, based in Argentina. I loved it. It was so much fun, but now that I'm sitting here thinking about it, I'm pretty sure Madonna is a Leo. All right, so these figures allow others to orient emotionally and psychologically around a visible identity. Leo archetypes naturally fill that role. They convert collective emotion into visible expression. When functioning well, this allows groups to feel inspired and unified. When distorted, it can create ego inflation or identity dependent on recognition. But structurally, Leo's role remains the same: to give movement a face. Aries begins the motion, Leo becomes the center others recognize. So why Leo appears earlier than Sagittarius in load ranking? I guess I'm going to bring this key card back up. Whoops-a-daisy. All right, there we go. So Leo appears earlier in the ranking than Sagittarius because identity formation occurs before philosophical interpretation. The psyche must first establish agency through Aries and identity with Leo. Only then can it ask, what does this experience mean? That question belongs to Sagittarius. Sagittarius converts experience into belief systems and philosophical frameworks. Leo simply expresses identity in the present moment. Sagittarius interprets the journey. Leo embodies it. Without Leo, so Leo's core contribution. All right, I'm just so ready to have this key card down for a moment. All right, so without Leo, systems might move but lack inspiration and emotional center. Hello, FI parent with Pluto. Can't wait to get into that. Oh my gosh. Without Aries, nothing begins. Without Leo, nothing radiates. The archetype converts raw movement into visible identity. People see themselves reflected in it. They gather around it. They follow it. So Leo is the campfire, the candlelight, the campfire, the fixated fire that everyone gathers around. People see themselves reflected in it. They gather around it, they follow it. That is why Leo exists inside the tier 4 emotion layer. Not to carry the system's weight, but to ignite and embody its spirit. All right, so I need to find Aquarius. I didn't bring up Aquarius key card yet. Give me one moment. I'm going to talk about the Leo Aquarius axis real quick. I gotta find Aquarius now. All right. And I'm gonna have to all right, so I think this is important. I just wanted to briefly, oh great. Oh, there we go. OBS is so frustrating when you're trying to crop stuff. All right. Extremely frustrating. All right, so here's Leo and Aquarius. All right, good enough. Okay, so the Leo and Aquarius axis. Identity versus collective systems. So yes, they are opposite each other, but they pull from each other and they have each other's characteristics in each other. One is good. If you look here visually, you can see SE hero and NI inferior for Leo. You see NI hero and SE inferior for Aquarius. So naturally, one is good at one thing, the other is good at the other. So astrology organizes archetypes into polarity pairs that represent complementary psychological forces. Leo and Aquarius occupy opposite ends of the same axis. This polarity reveals a deeper structural dynamic within human social organization. All right, so I just got like super dark in here for some reason. So Leo represents the principle of identity, individual identity radiance. The archetype asks a fundamental question: who am I and how do I express that identity into the world? The sun symbolizes the self as a central organizing force. Leo energy emphasizes individuality, creativity, leadership, and visible personal expression. It celebrates uniqueness and encourages individuals to step forward confidently into their own identity. So this is a very interesting axis because my grandmother raised me practically. She was my mother figure, a Leo. I'm an Aquarius, 11th house Mercury. So polar opposites in extroversion and introversion, but I am so deeply thankful she pushed me out of my like turtle shell and got me out there because I would not be who I am today without her. So I always have to give that credit where it's due. So Aquarius represents the principle of collective systems and shared progress. Instead of focusing on individual radiance, Aquarius examines how individuals fit within broader social structures. It asks a very different question. How should society organize itself so that humanity can evolve? Aquarius energy emphasizes systems, networks, technology, social reform, and collective innovation. The archetype attempts to design structures that support the advancement of the entire group. What I'm doing here on YouTube. This creates a powerful tension between identity and system. Leo asks individuals to shine. Aquarius asks individuals to contribute to collective progress. When balanced, the axis becomes extraordinarily productive. Leo produces creativity, inspiration, and visible leadership. Aquarius provides structure, innovation, and systemic perspective. Identity fuels progress, and systems allow identity to scale beyond the individual. However, when the axis becomes distorted, each archetype exaggerates its perspective. Unbalanced Leo may prioritize recognition and personal expression over collective responsibility. Identity becomes the center of gravity around which everything else must revolve, aka narcissism. Unbalanced Aquarius may suppress individuality in favor of rigid ideological systems. People become interchangeable parts within theoretical structures. Hello, God complex. Integration occurs when the two principles cooperate. Leo provides the creative spark of individual identity. Aquarius builds the system that allows that creativity to benefit humanity. Without Leo, systems become cold and mechanical. Without Aquarius, identity expression remains limited to individual performance. Together, they represent the relationship between the individual and the collective, the sun shining within the larger architecture of society. All right, so let me see what else I have. I'm on page 28 of 52. And I always say that because I watch my videos back to make sure the audio is okay, and then I remember where I'm at. All right, so this might be a good stopping point. All right, so I might go a little bit more. All right, so I will go a little bit more, actually. Let me take Aquarius down. All right, so I don't know why my screen got so... I just looked dark all of a sudden. All right. All right, so the Leo nervous system regulation model. So I am going to bring up the inner and outer key card just because I think it's good to have it up on screen for you to familiarize yourself with it before we get into it. I just love it. This is amazing stuff. All right, so I'm just going to leave that up on screen for now. And it's off for some reason. Why is that off? Great. Okay, there we go. For some reason, it's off a little. All right, so the Leo nervous system regulation model. The sun dopamine identity loop. At the center, I'm actually going to make this a little bit bigger before I move on. If I can click on it. This is so frustrating. Leo, there we go. Click. All right, so at the center of the Leo archetype sits the sun, the gravitational anchor of the solar system. Every planet moves in relation to its light and heat. In psychological terms, the sun represents identity coherence, the organizing principle that gives a human being a sense of self, purpose, and direction. So it is fascinating in astrology. Our sun sign is the month and day we were born. The sun sign represents our ego psychologically, our entire ego, the sun. Bam, there it is in the ruling position of Leo. All right, so the sun represents identity coherence, the organizing principle that gives a human being a sense of self, purpose, and direction. For Leo individuals, identity is not simply an internal psychological state. It is something that must radiate outward. Expression becomes the mechanism through which identity stabilizes itself. Unlike archetypes whose nervous systems regulate primarily through reflection or internal processing, Leo regulates through visible expression and social engagement. The psyche projects identity outward through charisma, creativity, humor, storytelling, leadership, and emotional presence. When that projection receives recognition from the environment, a stabilizing feedback loop occurs. The individual experiences a neurological reward response, primarily through dopamine release associated with social acknowledgement and positive feedback. Dopamine is not simply the neurotransmitter of pleasure. It is a neurotransmitter of motivation and reinforcement learning. When in action, it produces rewarding feedback. The brain encodes that behavior as meaningful and worth repeating. For Leo individuals, expression followed by recognition activates this reinforcement loop. The brain learns that visibility leads to validation, which stabilizes identity. This is the sun dopamine loop: expression, recognition, reward, identity stabilization. When healthy, the system produces extraordinary vitality. Leo individuals often appear energized in environments where they can express themselves freely. Creativity flows easily, social interactions feel invigorating rather than draining. The individual becomes emotionally radiant because their nervous system is operating in alignment with its natural regulatory pattern. This is why Leo often thrives in environments involving performance, creativity, leadership, or social engagement. These environments naturally provide the recognition feedback that reinforces the sun dopamine loop. However, the same system can produce distortion if recognition becomes the primary mechanism of identity stabilization. The nervous system begins associating emotional equilibrium with external validation. The psyche gradually learns that visibility is required in order to feel internally coherent. At this stage, expression may shift from authenticity towards performance. The individual unconsciously amplifies traits that generate recognition and suppresses traits that do not. Over time, identity can become dependent on environmental feedback. I'm the total opposite. Aquarius, do not care. I do not want the stage. I want to be behind the scenes. I don't want people looking at me. I control what I'm doing. It's this video work is great for me because I'm alone and you can watch and I can reply on my own time. I do not want to do this in person. Absolutely not. Public speaking absolutely terrifies me. So this Leo energy is not me. It kind of cracks me up. But anyway, when recognition is abundant, the nervous system remains energized. When recognition disappears, the system experiences destabilization. The individual may feel unexpectedly restless, anxious, or emotionally flat. Without external acknowledgement, the sun dopamine loop loses its regulatory input. The psyche instinctively attempts to restore equilibrium by increasing expression, becoming more charismatic, more entertaining, more visible. Integration occurs when Leo learns to generate identity stability internally rather than relying exclusively on recognition. Expression remains vibrant, but it becomes an extension of self rather than a method of self maintenance. The sun continues to radiate outward, but the gravitational center of identity is no longer dependent on applause. At this stage, Leo expression becomes profoundly authentic. Recognition still feels rewarding, but it is no longer necessary for identity coherence. The individual shines because they are themselves, not because they are being observed. So the Leo conflict cycle, identity threat response. Every archetype carries a characteristic pattern of conflict response shaped by its cognitive architecture and planetary imprints. For Leo, conflict rarely begins as purely logical disagreement. Instead, it often registers at the level of identity perception. Because the sun governs the center of self definition, criticism directed toward Leo's actions, decisions, or expression may be interpreted as a challenge to identity itself. The nervous system does not simply process the event as disagreement, it interprets the situation through a deeper question. Am I being diminished? When Leo perceives a threat to identity, a specific emotional sequence often unfolds. First comes emotional ignition. The individual experiences a surge of defensive energy as the psyche attempts to protect the sun, the symbolic center of identity. This may appear as prideful resistance, emotional intensity, or immediate rebuttal. The reaction is not necessarily calculated, it is instinctive. The sun protects its gravitational center. Second comes expression escalation. Leo attempts to restore identity equilibrium by asserting themselves more visibly. Voice becomes stronger, presence becomes larger. The individual may defend their position passionately or attempt to reassert their authority within the interaction. The goal is not domination, but restoration of identity balance. Third comes environmental recalibration. If the conflict continues, Leo may attempt to shift the emotional environment through humor, charisma, or narrative reframing. This is a social regulatory strategy. By redirecting attention and emotional tone, the individual attempts to reestablish equilibrium without direct confrontation. However, if the identity threat persists, the conflict cycle may intensify. The individual may experience a deeper emotional reaction because the nervous system continues interpreting the situation as an attack on identity itself. In distorted states, Leo may respond with dramatic emotional expression or prideful withdrawal. The psyche attempts to preserve identity integrity by distancing itself from environments where recognition or respect is perceived as absent. Integration occurs when Leo learns to differentiate between identity and feedback. Criticism does not necessarily threaten the sun itself. It may simply be information about behavior or circumstances. When this differentiation stabilizes, Leo conflict responses become far more balanced. The individual remains confident and expressive, but does not interpret every disagreement as identity diminishment. The sun remains stable even when the environment fluctuates. All right, so the Leo nervous system architecture. We have emotion, expression, recognition, and regulation. That is their distortion path, which, well, hold on, give me 1 second here. I'm always cross-referencing here. Okay. So the Leo nervous system regulates through identity expression and visibility. While Aries discharges pressure through physical movement and confrontation, Leo discharges pressure through emotional and creative expression. The sun governs Leo, representing vitality, identity, and the psychological need to express one's authentic nature. When emotional pressure enters the Leo nervous system, the psyche attempts to externalize that pressure through expression. Emotion becomes storytelling, humor, performance, leadership presence, creative output, and expressive communication. Expression converts internal energy into visible identity. Recognition from the environment then completes the regulatory loop. When others respond to the expression, laughter, admiration, attention, emotional engagement, the Leo nervous system stabilizes. Recognition confirms that identity is visible. This is why Leo archetypes often appear energized in environments where they can express themselves. The nervous system literally regulates through being seen. But when expression is suppressed or ignored, pressure accumulates. This can produce distortions such as exaggerated emotional displays. Picture a cat walking over your computer, wanting attention regardless of what you're doing. Just picture a cat energy. Leo, it's the lion. Total cat energy. Sassy AF. Totally can be sassy AF. Emotional. They're either in your face or not. Like, don't touch me. Touch me. Cracks me up. All right. But when expression is suppressed or ignored, pressure accumulates. This can produce distortions such as exaggerated emotional displays, attention-seeking behavior, dramatic reactions, and identity inflation. These behaviors are often misinterpreted as ego problems. In reality, they are regulatory attempts by the nervous system to restore visibility. Leo distortion survival order. Express, impress, understand, and reflect. The healthy development follows the universal containment order, which is at the bottom of the Leo inner and outer masculine feminine key card. So the healthy developmental universal containment order for inner and outer masculine feminine is perception, safety, values, and then action. But Leo often develops through a different sequence. Because expression regulates the nervous system, the psyche may begin with visibility rather than reflection. Just like Aries, Leo will jump before they act, or express in Leo's case. Identity projection occurs before internal processing. Recognition arises before interpretation. The inner reflective layers develop later in life. This produces a personality capable of tremendous emotional radiance, but sometimes slower to privately process deeper psychological meaning. All right, so I'm going to quickly introduce the quadrants and cap this video. I'm almost at an hour and a half. So, outer masculine, SE hero, extroverted sensing hero, and sun ruler for Leo. So, direct engagement with life through presence, vitality, and expressive leadership. So, actually, let me also read the key card. So this quadrant represents presence, projection, identity, radiance, and environmental engagement through charisma. Interacts with reality through visible identity. They occupy the environment through presence. Energy moves outward as confidence, humor, creativity, leadership, storytelling, performance, or expressive personality. All right, so this quadrant governs how Leo interacts with the external world. SE gathers real-time sensory information, while the sun projects identity outward. The individual naturally occupies space with confidence and charisma. Strengths include strong presence, leadership energy, creative confidence, enthusiasm, and ability to energize groups. Leo often becomes the center of emotional gravity in social environments. So I am actually going to make this a little bigger so you can see it better. A lot going on here. I get it. Leo, the entertainer. All right, so Leo often becomes the center of emotional gravity in social environments. People orient toward the energy they generate, but distortion occurs when identity becomes dependent on attention, like I said. The person may feel compelled to perform constantly in order to maintain visibility. Need another drink. I'm actually going to make this other key bigger. All right, should I move? All right. I feel cramped. Don't box me in. Don't box me in. All right. So healthy integration occurs when Leo learns that authentic presence does not require constant validation. Inner masculine, FI parent, and Pluto in exaltation. So this is identity, integrity, emotional sovereignty, and deep self-definition. Leo develops a strong internal value system that asks, who am I really? Fi forms the emotional core of the identity. Pluto exaltation intensifies transformation. Leo often experiences periods of identity death and rebirth across life. Healthy Leo learns the difference between true identity and performance identity. So, this is internal values, identity, integrity, and emotional authenticity. While Leo appears expressive externally, a deeper internal layer forms around personal values and emotional truth. So, this is the biggest difference. Leo is the odd man out of the fire signs. They're the only ones with introverted feeling. Introverted feeling represents morals, not ethics. So, they do not check in with the group when they make decisions. They make decisions on their own. And so it's a huge stark contrast between Sagittarius has Fe inferior, so they're like totally not aware of the emotional realm, their own or other people's feelings and emotions. I would say I'm going to dive deeper into this later. So Leos are very fixated on their own emotions and feelings. That is Fi, introverted feeling parent. They feel responsible about how they feel. They're not thinking about how others feel around them. So, while Leo appears expressive externally, a deeper internal layer forms around personal values and emotional truth. Fi asks what feels true to who I am. Pluto exaltation intensifies this process. The Leo psyche undergoes deep identity transformations throughout life. Periods of reinvention occur as the individual discovers deeper layers of self. Strengths include emotional authenticity, strong personal values, loyalty, and ability to reinvent identity after crisis. They're really good at influencing public perception of themselves. Think politics. They're pretty good at politics. All right, but distortion occurs when identity becomes overly defensive. Criticism may feel like a threat to the self rather than feedback about behavior. Healthy integration allows Leo to refine identity through reflection without losing confidence or just doubling down on what do you call it? Public what do you call that? You hire someone to write awesome articles about yourself, your public identity, whatever. You double down on the perception and whatever. I don't know. I don't just can't really stand politics. But anyways, you can either be authentic or double down on hiring people to write awesome articles about you. So whatever. All right. So outer feminine, we have extroverted thinking child, Saturn, and Uranus in left field. So this represents the expressive leadership, playful execution, creative command of systems. This quadrant organizes the external world around Leo identity. Child experiments with leadership, performance, and organization. Saturn introduces structure and responsibility. Uranus introduces creative originality. Leo often naturally mobilizes people through enthusiasm and inspiration. So, execution, organization, and performance in the external world. They can be very good at organizing people and systems, honestly. TE child brings playful experimentation within systems, leadership, and organization. Saturn introduces responsibility and structure. Uranus introduces the creativity and unconventional problem solving. This creates a quadrant capable of turning identity into visible accomplishments. Leo can often execute projects with enthusiasm when they feel personally meaningful. So they can be extremely ambitious. Strengths, creative leadership, ability to mobilize people, entrepreneurial energy, dramatic problem solving. Distortion, scattered execution, starting projects for attention rather than completion, resisting structure that limits self-expression. Integration occurs when Leo pairs creativity with discipline. And then we have the inner feminine with introverted intuition, inferior, Neptune and Mercury in fall. All right, so that represents symbolic foresight, long-term meaning perception, and identity trajectory awareness. And I ask deeper questions. Where is this identity going? What patterns repeat across time? Neptune introduces imagination, but also illusion. Mercury in fall slows internal reflection. The performer becomes the symbolic leader. Right. So long-term foresight, symbolism, and consequence awareness. This is the most difficult developmental quadrant for Leo. And I ask the individual to look beyond the immediate identity performance and examine long-term patterns. Neptune introduces imagination, but also illusion. Mercury in fall makes introspective analysis slower. Because of this, Leo may initially struggle with anticipating consequences, long-term planning, interpreting hidden motives in others. But when NI develops, Leo becomes extremely powerful. Identity expression becomes guided by vision. The performer evolves into symbolic leadership. What am I at? I might go a little bit more. I'm having fun here. So Leo developmental distortion timeline. I feel like this is a little too big. All right, so I just totally moved this and screwed that all up. All right, there we go. Is that too big? I can never tell. All right, so Leo developmental distortion timeline. Early childhood, ages 2 to 7. Give or take, this is always ballpark. Identity discovery. Leo children explore identity through expression and attention. They often enjoy performing, storytelling, dancing, drawing attention, and dramatic communication. Expression helps them process emotional experience. If caregivers encourage creativity while providing gentle boundaries, healthy confidence forms. If expression is ignored or shamed, the child may exaggerate emotional displays to regain tension. Middle childhood, ages 7 through 12, recognition and social identity. Peers begin responding to the child's expression. The child learns which behaviors attract admiration or rejection. Identity begins forming around recognition. Healthy environments teach the difference between self-worth and applause. Without guidance, the child may begin associating value with attention alone. Performance and attention. Adolescence, ages 12 through 18, identity experimentation. Teenage Leo individuals often experiment with multiple identities. Leader, performer, athlete, artist, social center. This is a powerful period because Leo begins discovering what kind of identity resonates most deeply. Healthy mentors help channel expression into creative mastery. Early adulthood, 18 through 30, visibility and direction. Leo often gravitates toward environments where identity expression is rewarded. So examples include entrepreneurship, creative industries, leadership roles, management, entertainment, teaching, public speaking, teaching, preaching. But eventually the psyche begins confronting deeper questions. Recognition alone is not enough. Purpose must emerge. Saturn integration 30 plus. So that's overall your Saturn return when you're 30 or so. It'll really kick in your own Saturn within your personality. As Saturn matures, the archetype Leo begins recognizing the responsibility that accompanies influence. Expression becomes more intentional. Identity becomes authentic rather than performative. The individual evolves from performer to leader to symbol. At this stage, Leo becomes one of the most inspiring archetypes in the system. Their presence encourages others to express their own identity as well. I do want to notate, what's his name? Stephen Burns is a Leo, and he does what does he call himself? Geophysicist, I think is what he does. Check out Stephen Burns. He's very young. I'm not sure if he's 30 yet, but he is a beautiful example of a Leo in a on fire in a healthy way. So the creativity in his presentations, him not being afraid to express himself, him getting a huge community of amazing people, I just love it. Healthy expression of a Leo on YouTube. So the highest expression of Leo, radiant leadership. When fully integrated, Leo becomes the archetype of creative leadership and inspiration. They do not dominate attention. They generate light. Their presence encourages others to express themselves more fully. The integrated Leo becomes the sun in the room. They illuminate others rather than competing for visibility. Their power lies not in ego, but in inspiration. Whoops. All right, so I will be breaking down each of those sections in depth. All right, so I want to talk about the Leo collapse pattern briefly, which I think I may have. Let me double check. All right, give me one moment here. I might cap it here. Should I cap it there? Because it's like we're talking about the highest expression, and I'm about ready to go into the Leo collapse pattern. All right, I think this is a good place. Hour and a half. I think that's good. What page am I on? 42 of 52. I will probably add 50 more pages. I normally do. All right, so this is just the introduction to Leo, or the ENFP, in the moral load ranking system here in my moral cognitive series. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. Feel free to write your thoughts and feelings in the comments below. Like and subscribe, and I will probably make another video or two, probably at least 2 more hours, on breaking down each of these quadrants within the inner and outer masculine and feminine through the distorted developmental arc. Understanding how to integrate your inner and outer feminine and masculine in order to have healthier integration and containment within your own nervous system. And then I will be getting into how to love a Leo and all that, breaking down the male Leo and the female Leo. So anyways, look out for that. Like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Take care, y'all.